everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, back to talk more comics, and right now we're going to be talking about Star Wars #1 2020 and new #1 start for the Marvel comic based on the Star Wars property. I read some of the early Star Wars #1 that was released a few years ago, actually back right when I was starting comics, but I had kind of made a point that I wasn't going to mix Marvel and DC and Star Wars up. I just wasn't going to read the Star Wars comics. Even though to be fair, I read probably the first 4 or 5 issues in a trade, and I read a few Darth Vaders. I actually tried right at the beginning, I think, to get into it, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to keep this separate. But when I heard that Charles Soule was going to be doing the new Star Wars, I said, you know what, this is going to be where I try. I'm going to really try to get into the Star Wars comics. Um, Mostly because, as I've said before, getting back into comics recently in the last few years, one of the cool things is finding new writers and new artists that I either didn't know about or didn't appreciate back when I was originally reading comics back in the late 80s to the mid 90s. And one of these writers is Charles Soule, who right now is co-writing Undiscovered Country with Scott Snyder over on Image, and it's one of my favorite books right now. I'd call it one of my favorite books of 2019, but there's only been 2 issues. But it's like early results for like this year coming in. Undiscovered Country is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. So I decided, well, what better time than to get into it? Also, because this is taking place after my favorite Star Wars movie, Empire Strikes Back. And so I thought, all right, the writer you like, the storyline you like, Disney taking over and writing their own canon to fit their Star Wars universe. Okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So this is my Star Wars #1. I picked up the Adams variant because, like I've said on many, 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 many videos, I love Arthur Adams. Always have, always will. Paid a little bit extra for this one just because I think it's a dope cover. And so I've got to say, I like opening it up to seeing a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I love seeing the big Star Wars symbol in here. I like seeing our crawl here. It's basically just recapping Empire Strikes Back, but this storyline is called the Destiny Path Part 1. And a big part of this issue is Luke dealing with his encounter with Darth Vader. And, like, you don't start, like, one of the most iconic images from Empire Strikes Back is Luke losing his hand. And him playing the events of that moment over and over and over again in his head, hearing the different elements. Rule with me as father and son, father and son, father and son. I am your father, I am your father. No, no. And it was like, just how this is haunting him. And I also just got to give it up to the artist, too. Jesus Saez. I like this. I like the art in this quite a bit. I think he's captured the look of these characters pretty well. But Luke's, we all know, or at least if you follow the OG Star Wars series, or original 3 movies, you know what happened, at the end of Empire, and then in between Jedi. After that Jedi, they go rescue Han. But it's the in-between story that we didn't really know. Now, I have always been a big fan of the Shadows of the Empire book, but they're not counting any of that. So, while I, in my heart of hearts, is always going to follow that storyline, I wanted to be curious enough to see how they were going to handle it. And they don't really differentiate too much from the story, and because this is immediately following their escape from Vader and Bespin, and trying to figure out how to get Han back. That's already being discussed. So a lot of this book travels in circles and areas of the story that we already know. They're mad at Lando, and they've got to figure out how to get Han back. But they got to get some distance between them and Vader. And even reading this book, there's like moments where 3PO tries to talk and everybody just looks at him like they hate him. And so when I hear that scene in Rise of Skywalker where he's like, "I want to say goodbye to all my friends," I'm like, "What friends? Has he ever really been anybody's friend? Has anybody ever really liked 3PO? I don't really have a problem with 3PO. I think he's just a droid. He's just doing what his programming tells him to do. But he always kind of says the wrong thing here in this situation, where he just gives them the information that they don't really want to know right now, or chiming in on something that doesn't really need, nobody really cares about, like talking about how he got blown apart for a minute. Everybody just turns and everybody just kind of looks at him like, really, dude? Except I mean, come on, he's just a droid, and they do it twice. Because he's like, oh, well, they find out he's going to Jabba the Hutt. Oh, dear, to Jabba the Hutt? Oh, he will certainly murder Captain Soule the first chance he gets. So he's just kind of, Captain Buzzkill all the time. But they find out, Leia, tries to console Luke. All this stuff we all already know. But they decide to go towards the Rebel fleet, who right now are like pinned down between a star and the rest of the Imperials who are trying to kill them all. And it's actually a pretty interesting tactic. They can't make it to light speed because they're basically, there's like almost like a sun and a star, or a star and the Imperial fleet. So they can't get past them and they can't go behind them. So there's this character named Commander Zara, who probably was in the last. I have a feeling that a lot of these characters were in the last Star Wars book comic, and she came up with this whole tactic of getting the rebels trapped between the star and our turbo lasers. She also says like something that's like, I told him it would work. I knew it. She's on a ship called Tarkin's Will, so I'm wondering if she's talking about Grand Admiral, Moff Tarkin. But everything seems lost. She's also one of these people that she's able to like hit a rebel X-wing that's about to escape just by eyeballing it. Now she doesn't have like the Force or anything like that, but they're just kind of establishing how much of a cold-blooded person she is and how good she is at her job at being a cold-blooded person. I also see that Poe Dameron's parents are in this book, so I'm also assuming that they were probably in the last iteration. This is me kind of jumping in the middle of this story, even though this is a number one. This feels like we're being having a bunch of characters that I should already know, or I would already know if I had read the last books. But Poe Dameron's dad is worried about him, worried about his wife that's out there in the fight. But the Millennium Falcon finally comes and arrives, and it takes a lot of the heat off of the rest of the Rebel Alliance, because this commander, again, her name is... Let's figure this out again. Commander Zara. She sends all these TIE fighters after them because she figures if she can kill Princess Leia, this will be a big old feather in her cap. And it's the ship that just keeps getting away. Lando tries to take the reins from Chewie, and he's not having any of it. Luke and Leia get on the guns, even though Luke only has one hand, and they get in there, and he's having a hard time because he reached out to Ben, and Ben didn't come back to him. And so he's feeling kind of lost with all this new information that Vader's his dad, and feeling like, is it true? He's still not accepting it. It's too fresh. It's still new. Literally, like his hand is messed up. And he's thinking about what Ben said about Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father, to Vader saying, I am your father. And so he's having these, conflicting feelings all in the middle of this battle where they're supposed to take down all these TIE fighters. And Vader says, it is your destiny. And all of a sudden, Luke kind of closes his eyes, and all the TIE fighters all start to kind of start colliding into each other like they've lost all control. One of the guys' controls will literally come out of his hands as the TIE fighters start to slam into each other. So Luke is using the Force, almost like unknowingly reaching out and having this happen. Almost kind of like, and if you notice, in the book, the TIE fighter's wings are kind of getting clipped, almost like his hand. So it's almost like it's like he's reaching into the ships and moving like this phantom limb to hit the other X-wing or the other TIE fighters together. Maybe I'm reaching there, but it feels like he's using the Force in an unconscious sort of way. Because when he comes back and he sees what's happening, he's got this look in his face like, Leia, I don't really know. But Lando gets a shot on one of the Star Destroyers and gives the Rebel Alliance just enough time to get the heck out of there. And of course, damn it, damn it, damn it, they got away again, and now she's got to go talk to Vader. Who, of course, because I guess this character has some plot armor on her, is not completely, she's not choked out by Vader. But she is scolded, saying if you had taken out the Millennium Falcon, the consequences would be significant. So he's basically telling her, you're dismissed. I will hear no more of partial success. Locate and destroy the remains of the rebel fleet. He even tells her you can go ahead and kill Princess Leia if you want, if you can. Just don't touch Luke. And then they also find out that how did the Imperials find them after the owl had escaped Hoth? So they figure out that the Imperials know how to break their code. So whenever they communicate to each other, the Imperials already know where they're supposed to go and meet, and that's where they can just keep coming and wipe them out. Meanwhile, at the very end of this, Luke kind of has a meltdown about not being, he's trying to talk to Yoda, and Yoda's not talking to him either. I mean, it's kind of the cost of leaving Dagobah and not completing his training, as he feels very cut off. And now he's feeling like, I love this though, because he says, I thought I was going to be a Jedi, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure Yoda and Ben want me anymore. And Vader something on Cloud City. If it's true, maybe I shouldn't be a Jedi. I know Jedi aren't supposed to feel this way. Master Yoda told me these emotions are a path to the dark side, but I'm not a Jedi yet. Yoda made that very clear. I'm still allowed to feel whatever I want. I feel confused. I'm angry. I'm afraid. If Vader is my father, there's no way Yoda couldn't have known. Ben too. They lied to me. That's bad enough. But the biggest thing I'm worried about is, if I'm not going to be a Jedi, what am I supposed to be? So, we're going into a bit of an identity crisis here with Luke Skywalker after the events of Empire Strikes Back. And I think it's a pretty good jumping off point. This is a reintroduction to their version of the events of after Empire Strikes Back. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with it. The writing's pretty good. The art is pretty solid. I am getting this version though. I am going to go back to the local comic book shop and pick up Discover because it's R.B. Silva, the guy who did Powers of X. So, anyway, I'm curious. I'm optimistic. I'm going to let it go probably 5 to 10 issues before I make my final decision on whether or not I will continue to read Star Wars. But so far, so good. I think that it's, like I said, it's a good jumping off point, and we're going to see where it goes starting next issue. I think we're going to see it go in a whole different path over Shadows of the Empire and things like that. So if you liked this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun. If you feel so inclined, you can donate to my channel at ko-fi.com/smirkingunreviews. So we'll be back with more comics later. Otherwise, keep reading them, and we'll see you on the next comic book review. Bye.